Hey you guys, Keith Riddle here, co-host of Chess Not Checkers with Jordan Tampien, of course. And today our guest is Joel Barbour of the Great Pacific Northwest, or PNW.
PNW, baby.
Great PNW.
The Great PNW.
But obviously, it's acronym for, right? Acronym?
Yeah, it's accurate. And only creative would do it that way. I would have just spelled it all out. He makes it look good.
Yeah.
He makes me want to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is sweet.
Absolutely. Well, Jordan, how do you guys know each other? Because I'm like the third wheel.
So
I'm
going to give a shout out to Mr. Baller Media, Corey Jepson, because
totally.
I knew Joel through some other channels. I think we've run into each other, but Corey hosted this fun event. Actually, almost inspired a little bit of what we're doing today.
Yeah.
So he brought in kind of there's 4 or 5 of us, and then he would film it, but it was just 5 of his clients / friends, and it was just no agenda. Sit down at a table, have dinner at Beverly's, and just talk. And so, luckily,
Was it recorded?
Yeah.
Was it like a podcast thing?
no, he video recorded something, but it was
gotcha.
more of a. So I sat next to Joel, and it was just like catch up. But like we have similar friends and just kind of cross path. Our industries don't cross paths all the time, but and from there, and I'm like, it doesn't take long to get inspired by Joel Barbour. So I was in there about 30 minutes, and I'm like, okay, so when I ever do this podcast thing, he's gonna be a guest for sure, because it's more than just Great PNW, and that's what's super cool. Is I think today I want to dive into a little bit more of who you are, how you think about things, and really what I love about our podcast, right, is we don't actually care about the Great PNW. We care about the person, the people who created what thought process creates
There's a lot
right?
of truth because at some point, like I don't either, you know. So
in our last
episode,
in our last episode with Tyler, it was less about 7.2 and 14.4. It was more about his systems that transcended every company, yet made him successful building them. And I think that's what I love about this. And so,
what's super cool about like Tyler is who gave me like my second real design job. So just the transition of like seeing Tyler just walk out here, I'm like I meet with Tyler once a month. Yeah. Like he's been my mentor since before I ever started the Great PNW. Like he literally, and we'll talk about it. He has like some prototypes of a new company, Sandal, I'm like developing, and like so we were going over some of that stuff like on Tuesday, Wednesday of this week.
Awesome.
He's a good friend. So.
Yeah, and so I thought after that dinner, I was like, let's dive into this one. Because I would love to hear more. Obviously, dinner was only 2 hours.
So start me off. Spokane native?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Born and raised.
Born and raised.
Never will leave, ever.
You love it here.
Oh, yeah, I love it here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So a little bit of backstory then. How did you get into what you currently do? Just one day decided?
Overall, I guess it's kind of entrepreneurial stuff. Nobody in my family really was an entrepreneur or anything that had any businesses, but I think a lot of it was like I'm a creative, and so I did a lot of art growing up. Grandparents had me doing a lot of art, my grandma specifically, and then because I try to piece this together too, like how did I end up doing this when it was not shown to me, it was not taught to me, it was not instilled, but really when I have to piece together, it was like my grandma had me do art, which got me into graphic design. And then I had some amazingly supportive parents who, and I have 2 younger brothers. Anything we wanted to do, they were all for it. They didn't really steer us in one direction or the other. But a big piece was my dad, like he was, very blue collar electrician. He's in an office space or in an office now. And, but seeing that at a young age, like he was gone, like he probably had to be on the job site at like 7 a.m. So like, he was gone before I woke up. So when I just remember these moments when I was little where like I'd hear the front door close and it would like wake me up, and I'd run out and I'd catch my dad before he was like getting in his truck, and I'd be like, I was probably like 6 years old or something. Like, hey, bye, I love you. And then like he'd be off to work. So seeing that mentality too of just like, you just fucking work, like that was really ingrained.
So would you say that like inspired you to hustle and to work, or are you saying like you like you didn't want to be an electrician because you had to like get up and leave your house early?
No, I actually thought I was going to be an electrician.
Okay,
like my whole life when I was a young kid, like, oh, what do you want to do when you're older? I'm like, I want to be an electrician. Yeah. I think the work ethic, it was just shown to me. It wasn't like, oh, I was actually like probably a really like early on, like when I was like bussing tables and stuff, my first jobs was probably a really bad employee. Like I didn't work hard, truly. And, because I never saw it as a forever thing.
But once you kind of found your passion, you instilled that sort of work ethic into it.
And that, because you become obsessive over it. So as a graphic designer, I went to school for design and I worked at the Inlander, like a brief stint there. they hired me pretty much right out of college. And then one of Tyler's, his business partner, Nick, they had hit me up to work at 14.4. Like, hey, we heard about you, come interview. And which is funny because I've always kind of been this way. I'm not super motivated by money. They basically were offering me a job that was like twice the pay that what I was getting. And I was like, I don't know. I love Spokane. I love, and then they gave me my first shot at being a designer. So I didn't want to like be a sellout. And then my boss at the time just pulled me aside. And it took me like a week to decide. And even Jeff, the president, was like, do you want to work here or not, dude? Like, they showed me all. It was beautiful office space and stuff. But my boss in there pulled me aside. He's like, hey, like if I was like older brother role, he's like, take the job. Yeah. He goes, we can't pay you that much. Who knows if we ever will, So that kind of started me off at 14.4. I then later moved to 7.2, and then I watched Nick and Tyler. I was really fortunate enough that like I got to travel a lot with them, all over the place, all over the world, and that's where it clicked. Of like, oh, like hearing employees kind of complain like, oh, this or that about stuff at work, and you realize like these guys are working 24/7, so everybody has a job back here. Like, how can you complain the slightest? And then that's when, because you kind of see stuff on social media, and you think the business owner's just like living it up, and like, and it's way glamorous, but then constantly on the phone, and then you see how they move around like clients and stuff. Like, oh, that's a skill set. That's a skill set none of you fuckers have. Like, just be able to hold a conversation, be like a real human. There's even that piece is so special. So I think I watched that. And then, so when I just was like, I think I want to start this clothing company. That was my first business as an adult. We had lots of little businesses growing up, but it was just like, oh, I watched Nick and Tyler. I understand hard work from watching my dad and my mom both, so it was just kind of came natural, and just like, and I poured myself into it because I love the creativity, and it was really easy to, because I was fortunate enough that like when I started the Great PNW, there wasn't really any competition, so I didn't really have any losses. It was just like win, 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 win. And I was like, we are just shitting gold over here. Like, it was crazy. Great. It was like, I couldn't make a wrong move because the buffer for like failure was so far removed.
Well, your brand, like, and I was around, and I remember that kind of that whole launch and everything, but your brand is it kind of that first kind of specific kind of crafty Northwest vibe feel, and you just didn't have much competition at the time, or is it?
Yeah. I mean, we're still, to our core, almost not identical, but it's casual apparel. We've just expanded on that. But we just started, we mostly lean on a lot of just like graphic heavy tees, headwear, and a lot of that stuff. Like for like 2 years, I would wake up, that's when I started waking up at 5 a.m. and I'd work for a couple hours. I'd go to 7-2, I'd work, come home, and that had my first son at the time, put him to bed, and then I'd just work on the business. So then I was kind of working 2 jobs, and
were you printing them at the time or just designing them? Were you inventorying?
I've never printed anything. I've always done my own shipping. Okay. But we've always outsourced the printing.
So you've always done that. Okay.
Yeah, but I was just like designing, and now we've just we went from.
But you did start as, or what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, as a clothing company.
Yeah,
so
totally.
You were working in marketing, and you decided I want to launch a clothing company.
Yeah, totally.
I wasn't sure if the clothing company was like a spin-off of a marketing company, and you guys were just marketing, or but it was intentional, like designed and built as a clothing company.
Totally, like did a Kickstarter campaign because I was like, okay, there's a hole in the market, because I would travel around camping, skating with my buddies for weeks, and just all you would see is like touristy gift shop type stuff. And I'm like, the Northwest is so much cooler. Nobody's like branded all the Northwest. Not there's like Manzanita or Lincoln City or like Seattle. And even when you did see that stuff, it was just like cheesy. So so then we did a Kickstarter. I just asked one of my best buddies, Mike, who worked with me at the time at 7-2. He still works there. Hey, can you just film me talk to the camera? I'm going to do this Kickstarter thing. And then he did that. And then just did that on the side. And slowly I was like, okay, I
don't really know how that works. So I'm just going to be honest. Like, I've heard the term, and I kind of get the concept, but how's the Kickstarter work?
You basically say like, hey, I need $3,000 to launch a company. if you donate $100, you get 2 T-shirts, and it's basically seed money without equity. And
it's not a loan; you don't pay it back.
I'm gonna start one this afternoon.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like,
it's a little harder now because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Like to stand up, but like, I bet when you launched, the Kickstarter was
you
probably
will get
just
3 of these coasters.
Yeah, essentially, right? Yeah, invest in our but you'd say invest in our podcast. You get one showing if you put $5, right?
Yeah.
So you just it sets up. It works really well for especially for kickstarting. There you go. Look, I'm not a branding genius. So that's all I know.
But and I studied. I mean, that was one thing. I studied Kickstarters for months, and then I filmed mine over the course of months. And then when we launched, I mean, there was enough work that went into the Kickstarter. Like that was enough to like start the brand, and then and then just kind of learned as I went there. And that even like first year, I had multiple people reach out like, hey, they saw it like. And I don't know anything about raising money. Like, hey, can I give you? Do you need like $5,000, $10,000? And I'm like, no. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, if I take your money and I lose it, or if I make some big decision, I go, let me like mess up small, you know. So I never took anybody's money. Never.
That's smart. That's smart. Very smart.
So
at what point in time did that change? Like, walk me through. Okay, so you do the Kickstarter, you launch,
and then like 2 years. I was and that was one where. It was interesting because I don't know like business. I don't know like I have to learn the business side. And Tyler the whole time he's really helped me, coach me through things. And actually, even while I was working my day job, like REI picked us up. So Tyler's like I don't know anything about lines of credit. I didn't know what a P&L was. And Tyler's like, well, let me see your P&L. And I'm like, I don't know what a P&L, like what's your balance sheet? I didn't even know, you know.
Sounds kind of forward.
We just talked about this.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know what one is, so I can show you mine.
So he really knew the ins and outs, like the finances and stuff. So that grew, and then I remember one year I paid my taxes and stuff, and this might have been
good that you had the money to pay your taxes because there's a lot of stories.
First few years, you don't always have that.
Well, that's the thing too. I remember going to Tyler and I was like, "Hey, they're saying I owe like $17,000 in taxes." I'm like, and granted, you know, I can't remember what I was making at the time, but that's a fuck ton of money.
It's a lot of money.
You know? It's a lot of money now.
Yeah,
you know?
that's the same.
And I was like, "There's no way." And he goes, "Yeah, this is Tyler's advice," which I don't know if he'd give the same advice now. And I wouldn't take the same advice now, as you know, like tax structure and business stuff. You don't want to pay any taxes, and you legally there's a system.
There's a way to get it,
right? But Tyler, he goes, I will give the same advice that was given to me. Boo-hoo, you're making money, pay your taxes, move on. Like, and at the same time, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I guess if there's like, you know, let's say there's 80,000 in the bank, I have another job and I pay the 17, I still have the money, okay, like, and moved on, you know, but that was a big eye opener of like, wait, I personally owe this money. He's like, you know, I thought it was like this business thing I was doing. Yeah,
it's just this thing on the side.
Yeah. So that was kind of the first. And then he was the one who was like, hey, go talk to the bank. And I've pretty much done like the blueprint that Tyler's given me is like, do this. I just will, for the most part, and I've had to learn the hard way sometimes not listening to him, but just done what he said because he's crossed these bridges. Like, hey, go get a line of credit because REI is going to put in a PO so big you can't pay for it. And thank God we did get that stuff in place because it did happen, and it was easy because it was like, oh yeah, you need 40,000, boom, go.
Yeah.
You know?
What's the greatest one where he advised you one way and you went the other?
Open a pizza restaurant.
Yeah, I would have told you that one.
But here's
I talked to Ramsey about that one. I was like, oh, are you sure, man? Like,
yeah,
no, it's gonna be good.
That's I told him, I was like, but he was like telling me his system, and I was like, I know, man, we tried that.
Dude. I'm going to blame Ramsey on that one.
Yeah, I would blame Ramsey on that one because he was stoked. He was super excited about it.
Him and I were together in Vegas, and and I remember we were in Vegas a year before, and he was talking about Uno Mas and all the food. Yeah. I was like, I will never own a pizza, but I could see how stressed you are about this. A year later, he's like, dude, a pizza place is for sale. As we're boarding the plane, he's like, this is a steal. I'm like, he shares a notes thing with me, so we're coming up with names, and I'm like, and if you know Ramsey, you know he's just fucking smart.
Just smart. He's good.
And I'm like, okay, if Ramsey says this is a go, and Ramsey and my buddy Ben, who owns Jerkins, they don't know each other. And I was like, Ben has said like, dude, pizza places turn. Like, they're great.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Ben, do you want to do this? Yep. So we all, on paper, this thing actually made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, and I think it still does. It is a great little business. It's just like, it's not something that I should be doing on the side. It should be something I really, really care about. So it's not even a financial thing. It's like a time suck thing.
Well, I think it's probably the more important part. Because you can bridge deltas of 1,000 here, 2,000 there. It's the hours and time where you're like, I could have created one more design.
Yeah.
And made up for whatever this thing's doing over here. Unless, like, to your point, it's a passion project.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I just want to put it in this area or something.
Yeah.
So
I think that's like a common story or theme though with entrepreneurs is like we will tell ourselves something's a passion project, but really it's just like a play for some more cash or like some money. But I think that's always like what I've learned anymore is like when I look at any business, like the first defining question is like, when everything goes to shit, are you going to be the one guy running it, right? And that was something like before I was like, no, it's fine. It'll never happen. And then I'm like, I don't want to go down to a pizza shop and make pizza and stand there. And, you know, and that might be what it takes for 6 months or 3 months or in a bad time or a piece of equipment breaks. Yeah. And I don't have that passion for that thing. So I have to say no. But there was a time where I said yes. Yeah. And then I was in that exact same boat. Like I, you know, in on a restaurant or in on a bar. And I'm like, you know, who's going to bartend Friday night, right? Like somebody walked out or somebody quit. And I'm like, I'm not bartending Friday night. Well, then we're going to close.
Well, especially when you have a core business that is here, right?
Yeah.
And then you're doing these and you're like, wait a second. To your point.
Yeah.
Like Brick West sometimes I'm like, what? I have to go down there?
That's right. And Ramsey and I are both just like, that's not our space, especially not mine. Ramsey is comfortable. He'll jump in and do it. That really, Ben understands that world really, really well. But for me, I'm like, I just have to write the check to put somebody there. Like it doesn't make sense, especially like I have 5 kids. Like I need to be there. I need to write the check, and I'll just
5
be
kids.
There
This whole another story.
We should have started at the beginning. There's even more to this.
So
you don't look old enough to have 5 kids.
Yeah, 38.
So how old are they?
So 11, 9, 7, 2 years old, 6 months old.
Dang, man. Congrats, dude.
Congrats.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I know, you too. You too and your young kid.
Well, I got a 3-year-old. I don't have 5.
Yeah.
I have a 3-year-old. I don't know. I think people say like after 3 it doesn't matter or something. I don't know if that's true or not.
I'm pretty sure it still
something
does.
that people have less than 3 kids.
Pretty sure it still does. You just get more. It's just used to it. I assume. I was one of 7, and I remember thinking. I tell my parents now, I'm like, you were saints.
Yeah.
Like you didn't even know what was going on, did you?
Totally.
I would have been like, I'm like picturing my dad now stopping at the front door every day before he got back from teaching, just being like, all right, you can do this. There's only 7 of them. And I'm like, wait, I've won. And I'm like, you give me a run for my money, man.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like my mind, the logical part of my mind says like if you have 7 or 8, like by the number 1 and 2 have got to be watching number 5 and 7 at some point, right?
It does.
Like you're like, make sure this one doesn't die. You don't have to parent them, just make sure they don't die.
For sure.
Totally is. I mean, that honestly, that's somehow my wife and I schedule time. Like even today, I made the decision we're just going to be closed Fridays now. We're going to work a 32-hour work week, Monday through Thursday. It's really crazy. Makes no fucking sense on paper, but that's what we do. So Fridays are kind of it's kind of nice, gives me a free day to kind of work as I need to. And I was like, hey, I might go to the office after the podcasting and like work till 5, or I've been trying to figure out the morning thing. She's like, well, I don't need you in the afternoon. The kids come home from school. Like, so to your point, like they do help. And, which it is funny to see my oldest boys be able to like change a diaper. I'm like, whoa, you know how to change a diaper?
Who are you?
Sorry.
I still don't.
So,
well,
I'm going to come back to the 32-hour work week because I think that's a very interesting one. But
the very first thing I noticed when he said it was, he said, we took Fridays off. And in my mind, I thought he was going to say, we went to 4-10s Monday through Thursday. But he goes, no, we went to Monday through Thursday and we work at 30. And I was like, oh, shit, he didn't add the hours in. That's genius, right?
Yeah.
Most people are like, I'll work 72 hours in 3 days, right? Yeah. But it's like,
we did the 4-10 one. That's why I'm interested to see your take on it. We did that
for a while too. Yeah.
And we had just such a mixed result from it. And the issue is because we have service-based probably a little bit more. Yours is still service-based, but you probably have contracts that determine dates. Like ours are, we're managing a property that day. So if you're not in the office on a Friday, and a leak at a property or something, it became a little difficult.
Yeah, the only thing really is like everybody else is still working. So like emails are still coming through a lot from like our marketing agency, like Strategy Labs. Like they might need something. So we're on base camp a little bit, and everybody knows. Like my project manager, Mike, he was working today. So we were chatting about stuff, and he's like, I have a mellow day at home. Like, let me know if you need me to jump on anything, So, and there's times where we do have to work on Fridays. It's super rare, but everybody knows, hey, like you're paid for 40 hours, but it's a 32-hour work week. Every once in a while, there'll be
do something there.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of function more like a marketing agency than a clothing company because of the projects we have and the design stuff we're doing, and everything's just branding and marketing that we're putting out there. We just happen to be selling clothes.
So is it obviously not a financial decision?
No,
was it just
a financial decision?
I mean,
kind of, but like that's where I go back to like, well, I actually redid my entire team. Like I restructured. We have a team who I believe can get it done in 32 hours. And I set the expectation of like, when we're here, we're fucking working. Although it does get lax at times, but like every creative place does.
Everybody.
So it's just the expectation.
Has everybody worked those same 32 hours, or are you like split shifting?
No, everybody's there basically 8 to 5.
Okay, so everybody works
like an hour, taking hour lunch. I mean, we have a mini ramp, so people are skating. There's a gym, so the gym gets used. So you are technically there, I guess, 9 hours. But if we get, maybe you're working 8, maybe you're working 7 hours. I mean, So
because that was ours. We had to cross shift, so then we did what you were saying.
Well,
so then you had like some people were Tuesday through Friday, and some people were Monday through Thursday.
Oh, okay.
So then you're still open that Friday, but the employee didn't have it. I don't know. I play with it all the time because I think there's just waste in every day, and it's not good for the person.
Yeah, and Tyler told me that. Tyler, because we used to have to log every hour to a project while I worked there, and he had some study or something. He's like, in an 8-hour day, 9-hour day, you actually only get like 5 hours of actual work out of somebody. It was like half, and I'm like, Jesus,
is that real?
but that's kind of the creative world too. There's a lot of BSing around, and like we have a really small team. It's like
how many people at your office?
Our office has 3, 4, like 5 in the office and warehouse, and then we have like 4 at the retail store. And then our kind of sister company, just another company that started Bison Printing that's next door. They have about like 7 people over there. So I built one big building. There's a 100-foot wall that divides it. It's about 12,000 square feet. Print shop on one side, PNW, it's 2 stories on the other side. So
nice.
I just try to create this place where just like creative shit can happen, So
what's your favorite thing about Great PNW outside of what the public knows about the brand?
I think
most proud there we go, not favorite, most proud thing about what you've built so far.
I think the coolest part is like it's allowed me to be like a different person. It's allowed me to function and learn about myself and show different values to my children that they may have never seen if they just saw dad take off to 9 to 5. I think that's kind of the wildest thing is they ever since Davis has been born, he's only known as like dad the entrepreneur. They've always known dad has an office, dad is this. So it's like maybe that's maybe they expect that they want to go do something like that. I mean, there's definitely times where I wish I was still working at Dutch Bros downtown, and all I had to do was make coffee and put a fucking smile on somebody's face. Because nothing gets you more stoked than getting your cup of coffee.
I'd be so good at it. I'd be so good at it. Trust me. And then once my shift is done, I'm out.
Mine was a ski shop. I worked at Lulu's.
Me too. You went to Lulu's? I worked at Lulu's.
Really?
I worked downtown.
I worked up north, and then when they closed that one, I went downtown. But I was a tech guy though. I was down in the dungeon.
I went
basement. Well, but I tuned ski, so like I was like, man, there are so many days.
Then.
Fred.
Okay,
legend.
So were you there then when Mike King bought it? I was there that last year too. That's crazy. So we would have crossed
literally
paths.
worked together probably.
That's wild. No, totally.
Yeah. I was going to school out of Eastern, and I was working at Lulu's, but it was the same thing. It was like, gone are the days where I could show up and just tune a few skis and worry about where I was going to snowboard for the weekend, and then it was like that was a fun time, man. Fred was always cool boss too. Yeah. Like he had like a lot of like
what was Lulu?
Ski shop.
It was a ski shop. Yeah, but they had
skate. No,
mostly
ski, snowboard. But they were also, I would say, they were kind of like the go-to spot at the time for like a lot of ski racers and stuff.
Yeah.
But like you need your stuff tuned up like every week and stuff.
That makes sense.
But he had like these continual clientele. People like, if you got kids that ski race especially, and you got 2 or 3 kids, and you're tuning up like 6, 8 pairs of skis every 2 weeks, they would come in. They would always like come in like pay with beer, or they would bring beer or whatever, and so we had this little shop fridge. So it was like, I was in college, so it was like I'd go to school and then I'd come and it was like the first hour or two everything was cool, but like as it got like later on Thursdays and Fridays, it was like the beer fridge got kicked open and we'd sit down there and drink beer and do skis. And I was like, at the time it was like broke, and I'm like, I probably should get a real job. A good thing I'm going to college. And now I'm like, man, if I could just go back to tuning skis and drinking beer.
Totally. It's so even I think about that, like my time at 7-2, I loved my job so much. Like when I had to tell Tyler I was leaving, I asked him to have a meeting. Yep. I sat across from him. I'm like bawling. I'm like, I have this PNW thing. And he knew like where it was trendy. And I was like, I have to pursue this. And he just like stood up. He's like, come here. He just gave me a big hug. He's like, this is what we've wanted since you started. And when he says and everything we talked about, even business stuff, like the line of credit, like, oh, well, we need to do this. And it was always, even though he wasn't financially involved in any of the business side, it was always we. Like we got this. So I felt like, oh, Tyler's got my back. It has my best interest, So
that's cool.
Yeah, so even when I had to leave that, like I loved going to work every day.
Backtracking the story for your kids, because you were talking about your kids and kind of like being an example to them, which I think is sweet. And it is funny because my parallel to your story is like, I grew up in a blue collar kind of farming background. So it was the same thing, like seeing the work, seeing people go to work, come home from work, doing the work. And then becoming an entrepreneur, I felt like my journey was a little different than maybe my kids, because I came from like blue collar roots, saw blue collar, never imagined, really didn't even think about entrepreneurship, ended up being an entrepreneur and having to kind of learn all these skill sets or enter this world without necessarily a background. But my kids don't know any different, right? Yeah. So like super cute, funny story. I got an 11-year-old and a 3-year-old. My 11-year-old's hip, but my 3-year-old, I always do every year. I do this big party for Thanksgiving. We call it Sinnergiving. Everybody comes and brings their families and kids. And before the dinner, I always like say a little piece and do a little prayer. And on my way home that day, like my little 3 on the back, he's like, Dad, he goes, you're the boss. And I'm like, I turn my head and I'm like, what? And he's like, you're the boss. And I was like, it was the first time in his mind that he had been in a group, and then but Dad spoke and like everybody was looking. So it was like he had this weird, and I was like, yeah, but that's like Dad's the boss. It's not what you think, But like someday we're gonna have to have this involved conversation, like what that means. But it was just funny because I'm like, he'll never know any different. Right. Like then, you can just wake up and go do cool things and start businesses.
Like, do you think? Does that mess them up? Yes. Like, well, I have to do this thing, and if I don't, well, then I'm not living up to what my dad has instilled in me. Like, that's the expectation is I'm going to start businesses. Like,
there's layers of the onion, because they say the first generation makes the wealth, second generation preserves the wealth, third generation loses it.
Yeah, totally.
And I think it's because especially like where Logan's, I have a 9-year-old, right? Yeah. Where she sees me now is it only looks fun. Yeah. Except for I'm not there. I'm sometimes there, but I was like, same story. My dad, because he taught as a private school teacher, was delivering a paper route. Now I look back and I'm like, Dad, I should have advised there's probably a better way to use your time. But it's at 3 a.m. and then we'd get home at 5. I'd go back to bed till 6 to go to school, and then he would go right to school because he was the teacher. And you're like, are you the person you are today because of that experience? Yeah. And is our kids being robbed of that experience, or are they already just that next level up? And so they're coming into your office thinking, wait, so like Logan will walk by the building and be like, Dad, we should buy that one. And am I like proud dad when I turn away, rub the tear away? I'm like, okay, I like where head's at. But we're skipping a ton of steps that went from I had no money, exactly, and she'll just walk by and be like, I like that one, Dad. It's normal conversations. Like, we should just sometimes she'll pull out like the brick and the old, and I'm like, oh, I've trained you well, but then I'm like, how much of your journey though? The good parts are good. I understand how they'll win there, but like, what about when the building loses $1 million? Yeah. Will she even know what to do? Yeah.
Well, and will you share that with her?
And how do you share that? This could be its own episode. We're not going to go down this episode.
So I made my kids watch the Hunger Games because I realized they're so fucking soft.
Yeah.
Like,
so true though. I'm not trying Hunger Games, but
all of them, because I was
you might have to fight for your life.
I'm like, they don't get it. Like, they don't like, and it was something like, and it was one of those comments, not like we should buy a building. It was something that was like so, and we are not rich by any means, but it's just like this like fucking rich kid comment. Yeah. And I was like annoyed that he couldn't get. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I'm like, we're watching Hunger Games. I'm like, you don't understand that. Like, one, you live in America. Yeah. Like, you're living in the richest country in the world,
so
right?
Privileged, yeah.
And so I'm like, you live in the goddamn capital. Yeah. Like, this ridiculousness of like what is happening, like, you have it so good you don't even know. And so I was just like, I don't want that to be lost, because I grew up in Hilliard. Like our bikes were stolen, cars were broken into in how to live. Like now there was, I mean, it is a big shift, but like now just living up by Manitou Park, and it's a totally different world. And like, I don't want my kids, like, they're not going to have to grow up in Hilliard. Their bikes are never going to get stolen. But maybe I should have.
The question then is like, can you
right?
teach the fundamental principles that you learned through the School of Hard Knocks to your children without them having to go through the School of Hard Knocks? And as a parent,
dropping them in the arena, right?
Right. As a parent, you're like, you left your bike in the driveway all night. Like, someone would have stole my bike, right?
Yeah.
So like, but now like to teach you this lesson, I gotta like move you to the hood, or I gotta like steal your bike. Like, but at the same, I'm like, so there's got to be some middle ground here.
And I think it's relevant to our audience as well, right? Because I think what we're talking about is how, and this is probably, I mean, you might be a good one to speak to it. Similar, I grew up Moses Lake. My story's really fun that way too. But it was like, how do you develop the mindset?
Yeah.
Right? You said multiple businesses when you were younger. I'm sure you had a yard care company. You were probably delivered, right? And it's when does that mindset happen? Is it born for one? Or is it developed through a situation? And then what happens when you take the pressure off of that situation? Like my daughter's like, I don't really want to play basketball.
Yeah.
In my house, you had to play.
You
had to play. If you were terrible at it, you just learned to get better. We played.
Wow.
And again, you look at those and now, but then I'm like, no, do what you want as long as you're doing something. Yeah. Because in my head, I'm like, no, I didn't want this. And then I look back at like this last couple of years of like going through this down market, and I'm like, if I wouldn't have had those experiences of like pushing through when you could have easily just said, I'm done. Yeah. And anyway, so this is fascinating to me because I'm like, then you can go to the mindset of, but it's funny. I don't think the mindset is, hey, you decided to buy 14 orders instead of 3. Yeah. Yeah, it could have worked out in that situation. It was great, but it was like that mindset to get over, okay, I'm about to spend this much money. Yeah. And that trigger. So it's super fascinating because I think upbringing, bias, and all those things play such a role despite.
And I think you don't even know it sometimes. Like, that's why I love, like, so many of our, like, because we're building a clothing brand, right? So a lot of our staff they're skateboarders, snowboarders, because they're action sports. Like, I grew up racing motocross with my brothers. So, like, you don't understand, like, branding is ingrained. You're trained. You're going to you're getting schooled because those brands are so ingrained into the sports. It's not like football, basketball, you have like Nike, Adidas. Like, you really would be like, oh, I ride a toy machine skateboard because I identify with that brand. You know, understand on the marketing. And then, so now when I'm an adult, I'm like, I already know exactly what to do because I bought the magazines. I bought the skate mags. Like, I watched the videos. I bought the clothing. I was sold on like these brands and I watched what they did. So I learned the whole time and I didn't even know it. That's why they make great employees, especially like skateboarders, because like, you know, I really cut my teeth doing motion graphics and filming skateboarding and stuff. And like, you see, like, we'll go out and film all day, like for hours and hours and hours to get like 20 seconds of usable like skate footage. You know, you have to like love it. And
that passion. Interesting.
Yeah, and I had a mentor of mine tell me a long time ago, we were talking about kids, and he said, the biggest piece of advice I can give you with raising kids, is like make their life intentionally harder, which as a parent, we have to simulate some things or whatever, create some scenarios, but also
steal their bikes.
Exactly.
Steal their bikes.
She gone.
Don't tell them,
She gone.
I'll give it back to him for Christmas. But also, essentially it boiled down to, he just said, the biggest thing you can do for them, even if you're raising privileged kids, is not do things for them. Yeah. So it was just like too many times we're trying to give them this like kind of life we didn't have. Correct. But we're doing it in a way of like removing the pain. Not just the pain, but also their ability to have to do it. So like, hey, we have people that clean our house every couple of weeks. That's nice. But that doesn't mean your kid doesn't have to clean their room. Correct. Right. So, but too many times it goes that direction. Like, hey, like I would have loved not to have had to clean my room as a kid. So for my kid to like, you know,
is that wild?
show
You
them
think
a
like,
life, I'll take that
if you
away
had a house cleaner.
Like, you can't even fathom
it's
it.
weird when it leaves my mouth around like employees and stuff. I'm like, I sound like an absolute asshole. No. Like, and my wife stays home too, and that's when too. It's like. And you have to have somebody clean your house. Be like, oh, we have a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. And like, it's absolute chaos. It is absolutely crazy.
Oh, it is crazy. The fact we have like just cereals that don't have Japanese brands on them. I'm like, oh, you just don't even know. But to your point, the issue is then this gig to provide all of a sudden pushes your mind, and that's the hardest part for me. Physically exhaustion, I understand it. I know exactly what I can do. I know my mind's still there. This is mentally exhausting. So then by the time I get home, it's like, yes, I want to test you. And I want to put you through the Hunger Games, but I'm so tired. I haven't seen you in a while. Like, I don't want our 2-hour experience to be back and fighting, right? I want to enjoy this. And it just...
I
leave the next morning being like, I knew I should have like made her clean something or do something.
And that's where my wife, she always feels like she has to be the bad guy because I just want to like, you know, and I always tell her like, God, not everything we have to like teach them something, but she's the one's like, keep your room clean. Yes, someone's gonna come.
I'm totally the bad guy.
You know, I'm always trying to do the stuff for the kids. My wife's like, stop, let them. Like now, she has the kids do their own laundry. You know, I'm like,
make their own lunch, do their own laundry.
I don't know if I've ever done my own laundry. And,
I still haven't. So I know how.
Well, and it's that old adage of like, you know, I grew up in the country, but when you watch people like train a horse. Or even like, you know, people have a dog, right? Like a well-mannered dog needs to be trained, but it's like, it's not as painful for the dog a lot of times as it is for the trainer having to train them. So like a lot of people own dogs that are like jump on things and like we all have seen like dogs with very poor behavior and it's like, but the owner was like, they didn't want to be the consistent like, hey, down, down. And then they have a shitty dog, and they're like, I don't know, he's just a crazy dog.
It's just
a shitty owner. You know? But I think about it with my kids, and it's like, it's not for me. I know this is uncomfortable. I know I don't want to do it. I know I've had a long day, and all I want to do is cuddle you on the couch. But like, hey, man, like I need you to do your homework right now, and you're going to sit up here and eat your dinner. Like, you know, for me, that's more of like I'm rationalizing by telling them it's for their own good.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
This isn't for me. This is for you, right? But there's some truth to that for sure.
And I think there is still a value. Like I just didn't know this life existed.
Yeah.
So I do think there's a value in understanding that. What are like some things you guys do to instill that mindset you have now? Like, are there things like we'll sit down, we play the cash flow game by Robert Kiyosaki. Super fun. So
I forgot. He
super expensive board game actually.
Make a game.
It's super expensive board game actually, but like you're playing through that, and it's like you buy real estate. Exactly. And so, but that's like one of the ones we'll do, or we'll sit down and I'll have her look at like a rental property with me or something. But I'm like. What are some like things you do, or are you intentional about that yet?
Funny. Yeah, I'm the opposite. Like as far as like business stuff goes, like zero. I try to explain a little bit like on investing and like how that
or
stuff
even
works,
mindset,
but
or
it's
even
mindset.
the mindset of it.
It's all mindset. Everything is mindset. You know, even like all the craziness. Like I try to explain mostly Davis. He's the oldest, but like I love this, like, and you are more than capable of anything you put your mind to. Like, you are so capable. I think that's the
huge.
biggest thing. Is just the mindset, the belief that like you can do anything you want. You know.
Yeah, and schools, you're an example of you literally can, right? And so that they get to see that ahead of you. It's pretty cool to watch. But.
Yeah.
All right, I could do a whole thing on just this one part because I think everyone struggles with this. There's no way us three are the only three sitting here wondering how do we keep our kid from being an asshole, right? And being a good contributing person that learns without having to like. I don't want to go relive my own like some parts of that. It was hard jobs. There was tough.
Yeah, and an underlying theme of this whole podcast, Just Not Checkers, I think keeps coming up, regardless of who we interview and talk to. Is that like there's so much of this conversation comes around mindset, right? Like the way you look at things, the way you think, right?
100%. It doesn't matter the business.
It's almost like it gets boring to almost talk about. You're like, oh yeah, our mindset covers, but it is so important. So when you talk about kids, like that, really to me is more. What I'm teaching my kids is just how to think, like the mindset they should have, or removing that as opposed to the discipline of certain things. So I don't know that my daughter yet can like analyze an investment deal, like the skill set part of it. But I'll correct her speech. Like she'll say, "Daddy, I want to blah blah blah," and I'll say, "Well, first of all, we don't say want, right?" Like I'm teaching her like neurolinguistic programming. Like I don't go this deep with her, but I'm like, want equals lack, right? So you say, "I intend to." Or I would like to, but if you use the word want, that actually will wire your brain to go into a phase of wanting. It doesn't teach you to achieve, it teaches you to desire. Does that make sense? So there's a few little things like that where I like when I hear her speech patterns. Or when I hear her say like, you know, and all little kids will do it, we did it, but it like, oh, I'm never gonna be good at this. Or like, I hate homework. Like so when I hear words like hate, never, want, I'm very quick to be like,
pretty good.
Charlie,
like that one.
I want you to say that different. I'll say it different. Dad, I'm really wishing I didn't have to do my homework right now. Okay, great.
That makes
great.
sense.
Okay, and you still have to do it. But we're not going to say we hate homework, right? Like so. That's really more the triggers I look for is how they're speaking because it's a window into how they're thinking. And we talked to Tyler a little bit about interviews, but for me, when I interview people, I don't care what the questions are. I love hearing people talk about anything because it's like it's a window into how they think.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, you're telling me your story and your mindset by just talking to me about anything. I'll be like, talk to me about snowboarding.
Yeah.
But now I get to hear how you think about this.
Totally. I mean,
great.
that's one thing. My wife's done a great job. I think it's where we're such an amazing team. But like, and all my kids do this a lot. My oldest Davis and my one of my daughters, Sunny. I catch them doing this a lot, where they and I do this, but like they will out loud like hype themselves up.
Yeah.
Like a perfect example is my son was learning to drop in on our mini ramp for the first time, and he stood there, and it's scary. Like, you can slam. It's not super mini. It's a good size ramp, and he just like, Davis, you can do this. You got this. And he'd just hype. And same thing with Sunny. I'll see her do something. She'll be like, you can do hard things. And I'm like, I'm like, Emily, you are amazing. And I'm like, yes, and I'm like, and they do it all the time. And I'm like, God, thank God you can like be your own cheerleader.
So in the NLP world, they call those mantras.
Yeah.
Right. So a mantra, by definition, it means a sacred utterance.
Yeah.
It's something you say out loud to yourself, to other people, internally. But everyone has mantras. A lot of people are just not aware of them.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will be like, oh, stupid me again. Or, oh, man, I can't believe I did that. But what they don't know is that by the age you're 25 or 30, you have these internal mantras of like, this is never going to work. Or you have the ones that like your kids are starting to, where they're like, I got this.
Yeah. And I
can do this.
That's something I, as far as like mindset shift is like, for me anyways, once you started getting like a few wins on your belt, I'm like, okay, I actually, because I used to tell myself like, oh, I'm a graphic designer. I don't know business. I'm from Hilliard. I'm fucking stupid, but look what I figured out.
But you're discounting yourself when you're doing that, right?
Yeah,
which wires your subconscious if you're not careful.
Yeah, and I would kind of joke and like, but then realizing like, oh, actually, I can speak on these topics. Clearly my track record shows we've sold millions of dollars of clothing. Yeah. Obviously, I know what the fuck I'm talking about, and I had to like believe it. And then I was like, okay, like now there's like zero negative self-talk. There's just like it doesn't even exist in my brain. So teaching my kids that like there is nothing. There's nothing you can say you can't do this. You absolutely have to be realistic. You can't be, you're in third grade. You can't dunk a basketball, right? Yeah. Like be realistic about it. But like 100% believe in yourself and rid yourself of any negative self-talk. Yeah. I mean, that's like there's not a single time where I'm like, Joel, you can't do this. Like, you can't figure this out. It's going to be really fucking hard. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a big one. And I hope that spills over for a lifetime with my kids, that they have no negative self-talk, because, it can build and build, And
not even for your kids, just anybody listening. I mean, that's what kills you.
It's it's that again, it's like, you want to change your future, change your story, right? And I think that you change that story of like, well, I'm not just a dumb designer who doesn't know. You don't have to say I'm the greatest thing that ever lived, but you can literally just change the narrative of like, I got this. I can figure this out.
Especially having just the confidence, which is hard because there's this balance of like, oh, that guy's fucking arrogant. Yeah. And you're like, could not, maybe, but like, maybe not, because look at the track record. Not. Like, started multiple multi-million-dollar companies in different verticals. Like, I'm not a fucking idiot. I know I look like one, but I'm definitely not one, right? And, so yeah, I think that's just the confidence of that, and just the like, I don't want to come across as an asshole or arrogant or like better than anybody, and so just trying to always kind of keep that.
Do you think you had that confidence before the businesses did that piece, or is that kind of one that it's like proofs in the pudding? You like now that it hit, it's like, okay, I can speak to this.
I think that's where like I don't think I was born an entrepreneur. I think it's absolutely learned. I was thankful that the Great PNW worked out. Would something else have started later on? Maybe, but like it's given me the confidence and also the ability, because if you have one successful business, you literally have the money to take risks to start other businesses, which I may not have ever had as just an employee, or it would be few and far between if I wanted to stack cash and take a risk like that on yourself on like a business. So like that's where you can take risks, and businesses can fail, and you're like, well, that sucks. And also changing the mindset of how you look at money. Like, you lose $100,000 straight up gone. My old mindset before I was an entrepreneur might be like, fuck, that's a brand new truck. I could have had a brand new truck.
Yeah.
But now it's like, fuck, all right, what things did I learn?
What I learned, yeah.
And because you can read about failures and you can read about losing $100,000 all day, but yeah, that would suck. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who think they understand business.
Entrepreneur.
But you're like,
that one.
but you're like, you don't know the pain of losing $100,000. There's a different type of education. Even me telling you that, like, we could be close and like, oh yeah, I understand it. Like, but to live through it and to be fucking have your dick stomped on that hard, like that, there's only one way to feel that, you know? And how are you better on the other side? And you're like, well, yeah, I maybe lost $100,000 here, but that's like $1 million down the road because here's why I learned that lesson. You know?
Yeah. And if you trace back those lessons learned, like I learned a pretty expensive lesson, like $500,000 loss on one.
Yeah.
But it saved me from like a $7 million loss in the future. And you're like, you just don't know where they're at. Like a lot of people will say, hey, I want to be a small business. We usually meet, I'll take them out to Quest. All right, here's roulette. Go grab $100 out of the ATM. Pick one number on that thing. And you set it on there. And most people won't do it. I'm like, nope, don't do it. You just go work, be an entrepreneur, go work for somebody. And then the ones that put it down, how do you react when it's gone? And then I usually give them their $100. I give them $100 back because I'm like, this is the cheapest lesson you'll ever learn is what did your body do to this reaction? Because it's going to happen every day. And if your body shut down at the thought of it, you should go be a teacher. You should go be in a very fixed income situation. And it's you can't simulate it. You can't simulate it. Somebody has to literally take the money out of their ATM with no thought of repayment. Right? And then they have to go gamble it. They don't know I'm going to give them the 100 whether it goes or doesn't go, but it's like it's the best form I've ever had from any of them.
That's really good. I mean, the whole thing with money, that's a lot of that is your upbringing too. How do you view money? But that is the hardest thing to snap. Even for somebody to change their mindset on that. Not that everybody has to be a successful entrepreneur, but I think you have to realize like it's all fucking fake. I mean, we might as well be trading cookies. Like this system is just the most ridiculous game. It's such a game and it means nothing. And I think once you realize like money doesn't equal things, you know, like and. You know, that mindset of realizing the fucking game we're playing, it literally means nothing, you know, and it's like
just so hard because we have such great marketers like the Great PNW telling us we need the thing.
And that's what's funny because like come holiday time, like, hey, you're trying to spend some money. I get to dangle this thing in front of you.
I need a few more BOGOs from you, though.
You know, and we take your money and like that's part of like as an entrepreneur, our job is to make as absolute much money as we possibly can. And I think a big shift of that was like early on when I had a different view of money, when I had one business and I was like, okay, let's make as much money as we can. It's like, oh, well, I think I have to have a handful of things ahead of that. I want to make as much money as I can as long as employees are taken care of. Like not expensive employees, like they have 401ks, they have benefits, like make sure my family's taken care of, make sure I'm not missing any kids, anything. You know, one of my favorite quotes is by Ralph Waldo Edison is money often costs too much. It's like, what are we sacrificing for the sake of money? You know, if it's like missing a kid's thing or like not being there in the morning, like there's so many days that I go to the office, I work and I come home. So I'm there when they wake up, we do breakfast, I get them off to school and then I go back to the office, you know, so they don't miss me in the morning. It's way easier to stay there working, but like, if I see they're working, what the fuck am I doing?
What are you doing it for? Yeah,
you know,
100%.
Yeah.
All right, so everybody knows you. Let's pivot it back a little, but everybody knows for Great PNW. But you also have several other ones. What are some of the other companies that you want to talk about? And then kind of share how having the Great PNW helped you either feel more confident, build systems, or whatever. How it connected to those other entities.
Yeah, I think all the businesses, they were never fully random except for like the Thunder Pie Pizza. That was one like, oh, this makes sense on paper. Like, let's do this. It's really sexy and cool. It's fun to be like, I own that restaurant down there. Let's go grab a drink like that. The sexiness wears off.
It wears off fast.
Especially once you're just trying
I'll just pay for the $6 beer.
Exactly. But again, like that was it's been a lot of fun, and that thing's still going. Let's see this. The second one I started, which was just literally these are just kind of out of necessity, based from the Great PNW, was commercial real estate. So developed our current building. Actually, I had to do a second build, which was wild to learn, building from the ground up. Which which I feel like I never want to do again. I'd rather buy a building and renovate, which at the time, like I'm not used to spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but the numbers said, hey, you need to go. We were on Monroe. and I needed more space. Yeah. But it's like, oh, it's $300,000 to renovate. I'm like, no way, no. And then by the time we built our building, it's like over $1 million.
Easily,
you know,
yeah,
and like
easily, yeah.
that was the first time numbers really like made me sick to my stomach. Is like when we did the addition on the building, now all of a sudden my loan was like over $1 million. I logged in my bank account. Let's see how much money is there. Oh shit! And I just saw that many zeros.
It's always good, but then it's always offset.
And then I just like was gutted. I'm like, oh okay. But then I had to just go back to like, the bank doesn't just fucking loan money as if like they know all the things we have going. Yeah. So HHR Properties, which again, that was just, you have to set up LLCs. Yep. That's because of my dad and all his buddies and his brothers, they were the Hilliard Hellraisers.
That's cool.
And I thought, like, how fucking cool would it be for HHR Properties to own like commercial real estate? Like people from Hilliard aren't supposed to own real estate.
That's cool.
Right? I shouldn't say that, but with the, whatever. It's
socioeconomic impact of the area.
Yeah. So I was like, that's cool. HHR Properties, and the one that I really love, which really allowed me to really connect with Spokane, is Bison Printing.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that business. Is so cool, and it does so much for local businesses that, and I know it's isn't arrogant. We're so different than every other print shop, and I think what's cool is we bring so much to the table, from the employees we hire to all the resources we have, because we have the Great PNW right next door. So all the manufacturing, all the resources that like nobody else has, truly. Yeah. So all those learnings, even from a design standpoint, we moved one of our designers from the Great PNW over to Bison, and like that business can do such cool stuff for other local businesses.
Are you doing mostly local or mostly PNW, or are you also third party printing for anybody and everybody?
PNW's like, maybe 15% of that business. Wow. It's like thousands of other companies. Like
that's awesome.
We do, tons of other local companies. That's cool. Tons of design, obviously printing. We do manufacturing. One thing that's really unique, which is funny because we actually did this out of necessity at the time for the Great PNW, is like just sewing a patch on a hat. Yeah. Like how many people can actually sew the patch on? Everybody else is heat pressing and stuff. So I love being able to jump in there when I can, but that's got a whole team that runs it. They do an amazing job. But it also, we tee up so much work because people want to do stuff with the Great PNW. Correct. Hoop Fest, we print a bunch of Hoop Fest stuff, Bloomsday, and it allows me to work and really be very local on that stuff, because everything we're going, it's kind of national. Like we ship all over the country from the Great PNW. So Bison Printing, I think it is just one of the cool. I mean, the brand's cool, the environment's cool. It's like, if you guys know printing, you go into a lot of these print shops, it's just like archaic and kind of just like, it's not cool. Like our place is just cool. So
that's cool.
So I love that business. And then we have Thunder Pie. And then we have Momentum Studios, which we're just opening up. I think we got the keys like yesterday.
That's awesome.
We just moved that business downtown, so that's a video.
Where's that one at downtown?
I think it's on Riverside, right next to like Lucky Leaf and the Fox Theater over there.
Oh yeah, right in there. Right in my neck of the woods.
Yeah. Totally. So we're building a studio right over there. That's video, motion graphic stuff. That's a lot of like national clients, but we do local stuff too. And then then Momentum House, which actually I started first. That's like business consulting, public speaking stuff. People just
coaching style consulting.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So a lot in the, not necessarily even like the clothing space. Yep. Some people just like, they need answers to like clothing, right? So correct. I've spent a ton of time and money finding out those answers. So if they can pay $1,000, I'm like, here's the factories. Here's what you need to do. Yeah. That saves them $10,000.
Yeah. So a Jordan who wants to launch his own brand piece, right? I come to you. Yep. You coach, connect. Essentially coach, connect, and get me there.
Yeah. So bigger picture, and then just the public speaking is a lot of times, and that's where like people asked me to come speak, and I did it for free for a long time, which I think is fair because I was still learning. But then I realized like, oh, I'm bringing a lot of value. People are paying to come here.
To be here.
So that's where I'm just like, I'm going to start charging.
I got you a gift card from Brick West, by the way, for being here. So it's cool. It's cool. And don't say it never was appreciated.
Yeah. And like, I remember I got the first check the first time I did public speaking. I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're going to do. And they paid me. Holy crap.
And so that facilitates you then going public speaking. So you have a coaching arm to it, and then it pays you to go basically educate at a large conferences probably, or internal companies. If somebody
asks, I'll be like, depending on what it is, be like, $500, come out for an hour and speak. I have a handful of presentations we'll tweak, and then I'm hoping we'll get it by maybe by summertime we're on like V3, a sandal company I've been working on for like 2 years, and it's like it really is different. It's so it really disrupts the market. The testing's been really awesome. So that whole brand, and then like one thing else that's been on the side, and well, I won't go too far. It's just it's a calendar company. Sounds really ridiculous, but I just designed a calendar I've been using internally for years, and a handful of other friends, business owners, I send them the file every year, like, hey, I need to use this. It's just, it allows you to visualize a whole year in one space. Very, very analog.
That's cool.
In a world that's like constantly digital. So
I love it. Which one are you most excited about?
The Great PNW, always. I mean, I love it. It's where I'm filled. It's where I give most of my time. It's where the biggest team is. It's where, the Great PNW, I get to really steer and do really fun stuff with. Bison, I'm not as hands-on with, but they kind of go hand in hand. But every day I'm there at the Great PNW. So that's what I like the most. So, yeah.
So what kind of fundamental elements do you see across all of those companies that you bring to the table as kind of the leader in that group that you're instilling into each of them? Kind of, it's what Tyler spoke to in his podcast, like was how no matter what, I bet Tyler could start an HVAC company in 18 months, have the top HVAC company.
That's
like
funny.
The way I talk to him, I'm like, dude, just tell me which one you're going to pick. But when you speak, it's not random. He has this very set piece and it just transitions. What are some of those things you're seeing work really well that you're applying, I guess?
Yeah, I think a lot of it just goes to mindset. Like, it doesn't matter what the business is. Once you kind of figure out one, and then, like, well, okay, those principles apply across the board if you do those well. Same, say HVAC company, you're like, oh, like, well, I'll just talk about the print shop. Like the print shop, I knew how many other print shops are in town.
Yeah.
But I knew, I'm like, we're going to be vastly different. And I go, we don't even have to be vastly. I go, you be 5% better than everybody else. And like, over time, you will get all the business. Like, and how are you better? Okay, you figure what those things are. And then from a marketing branding perspective, and that's, I don't know, it's just kind of innate within me. I went to school for it. But I think across the board, like, I think I play very different roles in each one. Some of it is bringing business. A lot of it's just like, honestly, like the hype man of like, hey, this is like, you're fucking capable. Like, this is going to crush. And I make the connections locally. We tee up a lot of stuff for both Momentum Studios and Bison just through my local connections. I'm like, I'm not really going out and doing biz dev. It's just like people I know and work with. And I want to continue to work with them. And I think that's so much of everything's just relationship. It's like, say with like our print shop, like we used another print shop for years until I started my own, but I never went and like the relationship was so good. I never went and like quoted out some other print shop. I'm like, I don't care if I'm going to save 25 cents. Like the relationship is there, and that's where you go back to business isn't really about money. It is, and it isn't. Like then goal is to have a very happy, fulfilled life,
So how do you? And sorry to interrupt, but how do you? So because I'm hearing you talk about all these things you got, and as a listener, or just as an interested party, how do you assess and analyze like your next venture, or when those ventures came about? Did you decide whether they were yeses or nos? Because I'm assuming there were some nos in there too, right?
Oh, I mean, I say no like every week. There's something.
So what's that vetting process look like? Like what's that kind of?
From a brand standpoint, that's usually the biggest one. Like, does it fit from a brand standpoint? A lot of us say like it's collaborations with the Great PNW, but also like from a business perspective, unless I can bring any value and it's not just like a money exchange, like that, then I don't have any control. If it's just hey, we need some money. Here's what it is on the other side. Here's whether it's long term, short term. But if I can't bring any value, then that's really risky for me because I can't control any of it. I know I have control over, okay, well, if I'm going to build this building, well, I'm the tenant on both sides. Like, okay, I can control that. Okay, if we're going to own the print shop, okay, I have some control over all the design and bringing work in.
Sure.
Obviously, I run all the Great PNW stuff. So if I have like extremely hands off, I mean, that's kind of it. So even the pizza restaurant, I knew, I'm like, oh, I understand marketing and branding. I would love to do this. So I have some level of control,
Yeah.
So that's kind of it. I don't really go out and seek any like, oh, where am I going to invest my money next? Because like, I don't really fucking care about money overly, I mean, to some extent.
Well, and I also hear you kind of drawing a line between like an investment and a business, right? Like, so if I'm just going to put my money to work for something and not have any control over it or effect on it, that's not an investment. That's just that's me trying to turn $5,000 into $10,000. That's an investment. Yeah. A business though is like I'm going to put $5,000 into this business. Yeah. But I'm going to say no to businesses that maybe I can't move the needle.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But if I feel like I can get in and move the needle, then that might be a potential yes. For you.
Yeah, totally. And so yeah, you're correct.
Yeah, because I mean, it sounds super vertically integrated, right? It's almost like, hey, doing so well, I need a print shop. Yep. Print shop makes sense. Plug it in. Totally. All right, print shop and this. That's pretty unique because somebody starting a company is going to want to know about both those. Oh, let's coach on that. Exactly. Oh, that makes a ton of sense. You're coaching on that, right? The building obviously makes a ton of sense because you're there.
Like, am I going to go, like what I was going to pay for rent, when I was on Monroe, I can own the building for, so
which makes a ton of sense, right?
Which is great.
And you get more space.
Yeah, I got twice the square footage, same price. I own the thing. Well, the bank owns the thing currently. No, you own it. It's a lien. You gotta remember that. Actually, I was texting my buddy. I'm like, let's get this man an appraisal just so you can see it's worth 2, but he owes 1. Like, anyways, I mean, that's on me. That's on me, Joel. And that's a piece that like I didn't realize as far as like, oh, what's something that I did? I mean, just kind of out of necessity or blindly, I'm like, oh, buying that piece of property, and even the way. So I think we bought the property for like $160,000, and nice. Which is so funny. And this is like 2016. I'm like, oh wow,
oh nice, you caught it first.
Yeah, it was just a great situation. But I didn't even realize like I just got to do this I'm just doing this for the Great PNW. Yeah. But I'm like, oh. Like you probably know Jim Orcutt.
Oh yeah, Jim's great.
I fucking love that guy, dude. That's what I like. Think about myself as like when I'm older. I'm like, I just want to be like Jim. Like he's just like smooth. He's just like cool. He is
dude. Smooth. Yeah, that's a good word choice for him too.
Yeah. So he was the one who told me he's like I started buying real estate when I was about your age. Yeah. He's like it's not get rich quick. He's like, but it is get rich for sure. Yeah. Sure enough, that dude owns up and down
everything.
Monroe. Yeah,
and Monroe, Garland. He's who we ran into in Daba.
When we were talking about the podcast. I know Jim. He owns some stuff in Garland too. And, so he didn't recognize me without my long hair. Though.
No, you need your long hair. It's pretty signature for you though. I'm sad to do a double take.
What resonates with me in this story though is the same thing, and we've talked a little bit about it, but. Sometimes we look at success and we look at successful people and we go, it was like this plan the whole time. Yeah. And you're like, man, he masterminded this thing and good for him. And I'm not that smart or whatever we tell ourselves. But I'm the same way, like with real estate investors, like most of my holds were like screwed up flips or screwed up other projects. Yeah. But then when I realized like 10 years later, people are like, oh my gosh, like you're a genius. And I'm like, now I'm intentionally investing in real estate because I know it works like that. By the way, the first 8 but it was weird. I remember looking up the first for the first time and kind of like I don't know. I should probably assess these things and see what they're worth, and then realizing, oh, like this is what I do to make money actively and about how much I make a year. Yeah. Oh my God, here's what these things are worth. That's like 10 years of my life's income, and I didn't do anything except for just hold them for 10 years. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, now I focus on it. But people from the outside looking in are like, man, what a smart guy to focus on real estate investing all these years. And I'm like, no.
And that's where, you always, I wish I would have bought real estate. Yeah. Soon everybody says that, if I could go back in time and buy real estate, And you're like, you kind of like, well, I did. I actually did the thing. I actually bought it and I've been holding it. And
my question is, but did you do it with that intention of like, this is going to make a tenfold return for me?
But that's what's great too. Is that I'm like, as we're just doing our thing, and I'm like, oh, especially when all of a sudden like property taxes are due, and I'm like, oh, this thing's worth way more than you thought. I'm like, I'll write that check, which is always fun. But like realizing that asset, and then so it's kind of nice because then I realize, HHR properties, it's like nothing but our CPA deals with it, but it's like I do nothing, but in essence because of just rent. I actually get to invest $10,000 a month in real estate.
Correct. And you essentially are, and you know the tenant.
And I was like, whoa, like that blows my mind because like I'm not doing that like personally from my finance. I'm not writing a check for $10,000 investing in real estate, but my businesses are, and I am the only owner of HHR properties, So, I mean, just knowing that asset of like, oh, if and when the time comes 10, 20, 30 years from now, or, you hold on to that thing until you absolutely have to let it go,
It's another great question as entrepreneurs. I always think like, how much of our wins do we honestly attribute to ourselves or to like luck or fate? It's all luck. And same with our losses. And I think there's a phrase, and I forget what it is, but it's called like, familiarity bias or something like where like when we win, we want to be like, look at what I did, right? But when we lose, we're like, man, that jerk I was in business with really screwed that up, right? Like we're really easily deferring our losses to like the market or the economy or whatever, but then our wins. And I remember the first time I ever not first time, second time I ever really hired somebody. I had to hire an additional employee, but my first employee I had inherited from a mentor. Like when I was in real estate, my original mentor moved, and so I kind of took his team or his group over. Well, he had a couple guys that worked for him, and I had this office. So, but I had told myself this story because so many people had told me how wonderful my head admin of my office was. Yeah, they're like, man, I don't know how you found her, or I don't know how you keep her around. Like she's so amazing and great. That I was like a great boss and that I could hire well, right? And then I hire 7 more people, and they're all terrible. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm actually terrible at hiring people.
Luckily, I just need to go inherit more things. What I think is an entrepreneur, you can only make a decision with the facts you have and the snapshot in time, right? And so for me, it's looking back. I look back on some of the buildings I bought, and I'm like, actually, they weren't bad buys. They're just I just didn't understand the liquidity and hold periods. Yeah, I had never gone through a cycle that said, hey, what if? Yeah, play this out there. You own a bunch of companies and real estate, but what if? Yeah, they all took a hit. Yeah. Can you sustain that? And I'm like, so my new box just has this thing up here. If 30% of them take a hit, can I sustain it? Nope, nope. And then it just goes, no, don't buy. Oh, interesting. And it's just this weird one where I think it's, I don't know if it's, I think that's why luck is so important, but what we discount in that is you still have to make the decision, right?
And it's I know there's
put yourself in a position to be lucky.
Be lucky. Yeah, exactly. It's and I think, luck, I think, has a lot to do with it, but it's you can't discredit you and how fucking smart you actually are. You've learned all these things. Yes, there are things, but you don't win over long periods of time. Yeah. Just lucky. It's but I think that's it is hard because think about there's a lot of people must be nice. Yeah. It's I fucking work around the clock and
I'll trade you, man.
I'll trade you. Totally. And it kind of goes, oh man, they really got lucky. They were when I think about this, and that was actually when I thought about when I started Bison, did I get lucky? Because I was the first to market. I just had this idea of, doing this clothing company. Maybe I don't know business. I think I do, and then it's oh, that worked.
Well, you might have got lucky to get those wins, but you still learned the things. You still learned how to really read that P&L. You still learn, and now you can apply those other businesses, whether that one was luck or not. I always kind of sometimes think of will my whole life be luck, right?
That's funny. That's funny.
Were you just born between 1980 and will I die and whatever, 2060, but you lived in this era of the internet was invented, all these words, some guy in 1776, the biggest opportunity he had in his life was the Dark Ages ended.
Exactly.
Yeah. For us, are we just lucky in life, in an era?
I think it also goes back to that's also an objective view of success, right? Yeah. That's somebody looking at you and saying you're lucky because you did this. Well, what if the whole reason you did it wasn't that? Yeah. And that's where I got caught up in especially when you're winning, it's easy to oh, you're doing all these things. Yeah. I'm I'm doing all these things. And then I was finally reflecting. I'm I didn't even want to do any of these things. Yeah. They were just this piece and the next piece. And I didn't have self-control to be you know what? What am I doing this for? Yeah. It's to help Spokane. Yeah. It's to show my daughter that you can do whatever you want. Yeah. It's to put some food on the table, right? And I'm dang it. Yeah. I missed the mark on that because it's just everybody's vision of success was more.
And I think that's if you're not an entrepreneur, I think sometimes it does get you on the outside looking in. It does seem very at least not that I overly have this view of entrepreneurs, but maybe a lot of vain pursuits, the nice cars, the trips, and all these things, and then, but that's actually not it for most business owners that I know. It's it's not that. It's well, you've made the means for yourself. Would you rather fly first class or economy? It's not vain to fly in first class. Yeah. You fucking worked your ass off. Treat yourself. And it's those type of things that you do need to really embrace your wins and take the money when you can. That was one thing Tyler had told me. He's I've seen people just toil in their business and keep the money in the business. And then if it doesn't work out, they never took the money. Correct. They kind of paid themselves the bottom line and then on to the next thing. So take the extra money. You've earned it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing from both you guys are getting at is there's this balance, right? Of as an entrepreneur, it's kind of maybe some of us become entrepreneurs and grow into it because we have this like chip on our shoulder. Like we come up from blue, you know, we're like, you're like, so I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to make, be
I'm
my own boss,
entitled
make
to
my
this
own
piece.
thing.
I worked this hard.
But if you're not careful, it'll like jade you, right? Like then other people look at you and you're like, well, you don't know how hard I work. You don't know, you know. So it's like this. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Like the cool thing about being an entrepreneur is, you get to be your own boss, make your own schedules, pick your own battles. And you got to work your ass off, and you're gonna get your face punched in, and that's part of the process, and it comes with it, right?
I will say this is like pretty eye opening because my brother, both of them are blue collar, work really fucking hard, and you know, and if I would say, oh, I'll run circles on anybody, I work hard, and like, but it's just like not true. I work really hard. I work crazy hours, probably a lot like you guys do. And my brother Connor was like, yeah, but you don't work any harder than like the single mom working like 2 or 3 jobs. And I was like floored by that. I was like, like she could be working way harder than you.
You just get paid better.
You know, yeah, exactly.
Like you're more strategic. Right?
Yeah, I was like, I guess I didn't put myself in that position. But she's working really hard. I was like, holy shit. Like, and I only put myself in the eyes of like all my other business owner friends. Or I think about this a lot. I'm like, what if I were like the mayor of Spokane? What if we had a mayor that worked the same way I do? Like, what does this city look like?
God.
You know, and that's where it's like, oh, is that arrogant? Think, oh, I would make this place absolutely fucking great because I understand business. I understand just real human, like just very practical principles. You know,
you heard it here, Joel Barbour for mayor, so that's gonna be easier.
Yeah, which I think I've spoken about before on other podcasts. I mean, it's something that has been like on my mind, like low key, for a while now. And my buddy, he's my neighbor, Mike Baumgartner. Which
Mike's awesome. Yeah.
Mike is one of the coolest dudes.
Congrats to Mike. Yeah,
yes,
it's a good win.
Yeah, absolutely. And but like, I remember he was like the first politician besides Kevin Parker that I shared it with, and Mike was like, "Oh yeah, you can do it easy." And like he just like, I'm like, "Whoa!" You instantly were like, "Yeah, you could do it." I'm like, usually it's just kind of a joke.
Yeah,
I'm like, it's gonna be a joke until like it's not. And I find myself like putting yard signs up. Or something.
No, you could easily do it. And you'd market it, you'd bring that brand to it. You'll just run into some of the institutional elements that'll probably frustrate you that you don't have to deal with now.
Yeah, things that I don't
like. Wait, I made this
know.
rule, and this entire city council told me no.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? You can't tell me no. I'm the mayor. Well, kind of the mayor, right?
Yeah.
No, that's so true though.
Well, and I mean, not to get in the political aspect, but there's so many the variables that come into the political game where you're right. Like, it'd be great to have like an entrepreneur or these kind of leadership people that get in there, but would the system itself hamstring them to where like all of a sudden now, you know, if Joel could go be Joel, he'd be super effective. But Joel can't be Joel in that role because of all these like strings attached. And so now all of a sudden, Joel's just another asshole politician who couldn't get anything done, right? But we're blaming the guy instead of the institution. I think there's definitely a broken aspect of American politics that are it's thwarting people's efforts as well as probably deterring people like us from even getting in. Like I said, I'm like, well, it's resistance is futile, so to speak, in so many regards.
I'll just stay running businesses and figuring out. Like, I know there's a system in place, but like even though you want to go change it, you're like,
we're going back to your moving the needle, right? In the entrepreneurial world, I know I can move this needle, and I know how to move this needle. In the political world, I'm like, I don't like going in and working the same way and feeling like the needle is vibrating back and forth.
I definitely don't want the entire city to be my client. That's too much. But no, I think the biggest shock for me was I grew up in a world where you kind of have those 3 hierarchies, right? The first one is you get paid for your time. Yeah. That was the world I grew up in. Yeah. You go put in 40 hours, I'm going to pay you for your 40 hours. Yeah. Whatever you do, right? Then you can elevate to this world that's like, I'm going to pay you to manage those people that are getting paid by the hour. And a lot of people, that's your ceiling. Your goal is to get up to that point. And then where I tripped up the most was then you move to what ideally is what everyone thinks the coolest one is you get paid for the idea that funds the manager, that gets the people working. And I've struggled in that world the most because I grew up in a world where why aren't you just working hard? Yeah. And so I'll skip health, like I've talked to you about. I'll skip things just because I'm like, no, I'll outwork this problem.
That's a hard one. The health one is
huge and
so huge because we have an endless list. And you're like, either I go to the gym or these things don't get done. And then you realize like, okay, like, and it's hard. I'll go like this last month, like I told myself that for like weeks and like, oh, I'm actually probably worse off and at least efficient. If I would have just taken 12 hours of that month and gone to gym maybe every other day, I actually would have got more done, you know? So that's one thing, like, don't tell yourself that lie that you don't have time. Like, you got to take care of yourself first. And very kind of like being a business owner, it feels very selfish at times, but like you have to protect, like, yes, you may have 50 employees and you lose a client. Like I got to let 5 people go. Like you're not going to be cutting your salary. You have to let those people go. Yeah. And it's kind of like a necessary pain you have to go through, you know?
What are kind of 3 things you do, 2 things, 1 thing, whatever, how many things that kind of on a daily basis that keep you in the right mindset, that keep you kind of focused and just being the best you?
Yeah.
Because I do appreciate about you. I don't feel like you build businesses that chase. Well, you started a pizza company, so that's easy, right? That chase money. Like I feel like it's brand forward. You build such a good brand that it happens to make.
Yeah, which that's the one my kids love the most. They love.
Of course they do. Dude, I'm telling you, it's the best.
Dad's the boss.
You go to Dad's the boss, baby.
We get free pizza.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, one is like, this is a game. Like, this is true. Like, business and life to some extent. One, with life, like, nobody knows what the fuck we're doing. Yeah. We want to know. We think we know this. All these different religions, they say this, but it's like, you don't know. And I think that's the biggest one is like, okay, if you look at that as a game, we all know how the game ends for every single person. You fucking die. Yeah. So like, knowing that, knowing like, end goal is you fucking die when this is over. And like, your life and business are very, very similar in some aspects where like, you think about like birth, like it's fucking chaotic. Obviously I've seen this happen 5 times. There's nothing beautiful or it is just like fucking gnarly, like babies shooting out of them. Like it's insane, right? So you're kind of, when you think about like, okay, you're born in absolute fucking chaos. When you die, that could be chaos. It's sad regardless. Even if you have a grandparent die, there's just like this sadness. And sometimes businesses are the same way. Like it's just, you're starting, you're going, it's kind of chaotic, you know, and then say you sell a business or it closes. Either way, there'd be a kind of a sadness of a letting go. You've built something cool. You got a chunk of money, but you sold it. And it's like, going back to like, it's about the journey, not the destination. So like same thing with like business stuff and with life. It's like, if we're really, you have sadness and death on one end and absolute fucking chaos in the beginning, how do we just bring peace? Yeah. This sounds so hippie. Peace and love and happiness and calmness in the middle. Cause it's almost like we're fighting against it. And I think, so for me, I'm like, this is what I need. And knowing the system that we're also playing, this American system with taxes and business, and you have the fucking Hunger Games, like it's a fucking game and it doesn't matter. Great PNW can be gone. I could die on my way home and like the world keeps fucking ticking. So when you realize like none of this fucking matters, it allows you to just like breathe and do whatever the fuck you want to do. And I think you have to be so honest with yourself. And I think we're not really honest with ourselves. I think maybe because like socially you don't want to say, I want to make as much fucking money as I can. Like, why? Because I want to golf more. Yeah. Because I want to, like, that's really vain. Or like something simple as like we know from a marketing perspective, like sex sells. Nobody wants to say like, I want to have sex every day. You should go fucking have sex every day because you're going to be extremely happy. Like nobody wants to like say, but if you're honest with yourself, like, okay, let's just say I want to make as much money, I want to have as much sex as I can. You know, and granted, if you're married, hopefully it's just like with your spouse, right?
Let's go with that. Let's go with that.
But if you're single, you do whatever. But like, okay, fine. As long as you're not hurting anybody, like how do you set your day up, especially when you have kids, for your wife to like make sure that happens, make sure everybody's taken care of. So like if you want to make as much money as you can, so it's like, yeah, here are these things, but like here's the guardrails that they have to play in. Like if it's hurting people, if you're not taking care of people, if you're missing kids, if that's the guardrails, then like go max this meter out. But you can put it, so for me, if I want to check all these lists, right, first, then that might be like, Joel, you'll only ever make, let's just say $100,000 a year. That's it. You take those guardrails off, well, then it's $1 million. But it's like, where's your happiness, you know? And I think that's where like being brutally honest and brutally self-aware, where like, you know, if you look in the mirror and you know you're not happy, like I use this term to myself all the time in the gym, is just fog up the glass to where I literally, I have to do it. This is so funny, but like with my shirt off to see myself like just as I am. And I walk up to the fucking glass so much to where like my breath is fogging up the mirror. And you look yourself in the fucking face and you say like, am I the man I say I am? Am I showing up for the people around me? Because I'm going to say, oh yeah, Joel's there for employees, or like somebody needs, I'm going to say, oh, anybody needs money. Yeah, I'll give you one. But like, do you take care of the people around you? Are you there for your kids? Are you there for your wife? Are you there for your family? And you fucking know if you're not.
Yeah.
And you fucking look yourself in the mirror. And if you know something has to change, say you're like, yeah, I am probably drinking a little bit too much, or like whatever, or I hurt somebody, like, or I'm holding on to a lot of fucking hate towards these, like this person, like, go fucking fix it, because like that will hold you back. So I think that's where you have to be brutally honest. So that's every day. Like I truly try to be so fucking brutally honest and not lie to myself, because you can
lie to yourself. You're a salesman, right? You could create that. I'm a salesman. I know I can lie to myself.
Selling yourself is an easy game.
I still think I can run a mile.
What I'm hearing you saying, what's so funny is like our last podcast with Tyler, like there was an aspect of that, but like it's like self-awareness. Like being honest with yourself, but also being self-aware, taking that time to be self-aware, because otherwise we can always kind of, like you said, put these things at the back. But what I found 100%. Is like, you know, if you're waiting to get in shape until you have the time to get in shape after your business is correct, then you never go to the gym, right? If you're waiting to write that book, like Tyler was talking about, until you got the time, well, you're never going to write the book. So you got to make, you're like, the book's important, so I got to make the time for that. My health's important, I got to make time. Then you fit your business in what's left. But you play like, you know, like you run like the rails are coming off.
It's scary because you're
super scary, because you're like, I got to get it done, or like
it's going to come crashing down if I don't put in those hours.
I don't send this email.
Well, and I think that is like a chestnut checkers mindset thing of like, if you're waiting to become until you're ready, then you never become, right?
Dude,
like
totally.
you have to be willing to be that person before you're the person to actualize. As hippie as that sounds, right?
What you're saying, Keith, is so true, because it's you live through these things twice. Like it's what is in your head is just as real as what physically happens. And I'm not a huge what do you call it when you just will things in it? What do you call that?
Manifestation, visualization.
Manifestation.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
I am, but I'm
going
to
visualize this and it's going to happen, because I think there's a lot of stuff on social media where people, I'm going to manifest this. Like, no, you're going to go fucking work.
Yeah, you're looking to go broke.
But it does. You have to. If it doesn't ever happen here, it's like it's an impossibility.
So
for it to happen
I would
out there.
counter that only to say that I bet you actually are. You just don't semantically call it that. So just like earlier, I was thinking like I call it a mantra. Well, you're like, no, I see my kids just like you know. I bet you. I mean, I would classify you as a vision guy, or you wouldn't be where you are.
Agreed.
So you have vision, of like cool, awesome shit.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I don't really manifest. I'm like, oh, the fuck you don't. But you actually do all the time.
You don't put it out there, right?
But I definitely
just purposeful. You don't sit down and hum and do it.
But you picture a great PNW will be
timeline. Yeah. So I think that's the big
But you're
thing.
picturing the end goal.
Yeah.
And so like when you're looking at it, right? You see it, you feel it, you're making decisions around it.
Yeah.
Like that's the one that helped me. Helped me in my golf game the most.
Really?
I got to step up and I started just looking, okay, where's this ball going?
Yeah.
And
as opposed to like focusing on the ball on the ground.
Focus on the ball and just thinking my swing was it. And I'm like, okay, I already know my swing. It's not changing today. I'm not great. I mean, I think I'm an 11 handicap, but like it was one of those where I'm like, okay, now if you picture where it's going, but even kind of now we're thinking about, okay, where do you move the house? Well, I already drove by the house I want. I pictured in my head, picture the car, I'm going to put it, and then it's like, okay, now when I make a decision in a day, it's like, does that rise up there? So one of my questions is, what are your non-negotiables? Like if you want to share them, you don't have to share them, but like kind of that list where you're like, okay, I'm going to add those and I'm going to build my schedule or my thing around this.
Yeah, on a daily basis.
Yeah, or weekly or monthly, just something where they're the pillars or the rock, something I call them.
So my non-negotiables, they change almost within the quarter, kind of from a business perspective,
or even personal. Right?
Yeah, from a personal side, it's like I was saying earlier, like making sure my family is happy and taken care of, and I'm available. You know, and if that's not happening,
that's them. You can take the call.
Which actually is my wife. So, and I have 2 sick kids. Yeah. Oh, I think she realized that that I'm.
Oh, you're good.
She started still talking. Funny. So no, it's no big deal. Yeah, I mean, non-negotiable is like constantly checking in with Emily and letting her also be like brutally honest with like she's really good at like I'm going to take care of everything. Joel doesn't need to stress about stuff for the house. From like, I mean, I can tell the type of day my wife has had when I like approach the door and like her keys are still in the door and like oh, you've had your hands full.
It is,
and you know, I can pick stuff up for 30 40 minutes and kind of reset the house, you know. But yeah, I think that's the biggest one, is making sure the people around me know I'm fully available. I mean, especially, I'm sure you guys get this, where like friends, or they see you or they text you like, hey, I know you're busy, and it's like, not I'm not busy, not too busy for you. Like you are what matters. Like you are a close friend, you are a family. Like I'm always fucking busy, but like not for you. I'd never want, and that's one of those things, like I'm sure you guys have, like, you have to keep your circle really tight. You don't let people take your time. I mean, that's a big one. Like, friend of a friend of, like, you want to go, no, I'm not going to grab coffee with you. Here's my email address, but yeah, really protecting my time. I mean, as you guys know, your time is, you will never, ever, you will not get it back. And we're just all marching on to the same thing. You're going to fucking die. So like and you don't know when, and we're absolutely obsessed with it. You got to think about, like, when you hear somebody, oh, so-and-so died, instant, how? You want to know how? We're absolutely obsessed with it, So, I mean, in that type of, it's like, protecting my time is like number one. So like I hired a project manager, Mike, and I said, look, your job is to like protect my time so I can, like, I just want to design again. I just need to design. I go, that's going to be a lot of random stuff. And Mike he's an absolute animal. He tackles all these amazing things for me. And he just, doesn't matter like what it is, because he knows, like, if I'm changing a light bulb or something at Thunder Pie, then I don't get a design. Correct. And which means the business isn't thriving the way it should, and I'm not thriving, So,
super cool.
Yeah. So I don't know. As far as like non-negotiable, the biggest one is just like really protecting my time and protecting my time with my family, and making sure everybody's happy and taken care of. And that doesn't always happen. Like sometimes my wife's like, no, I'm actually really, really sad right now because of like all this stuff is happening. And I'm like, how did I not? Because she just like masks it with all the things we have going on.
Because she knows you're busy.
Yeah. Right? And I'm like, and that's where I'm like, money often costs too much. And it's like, and this is what it is. It's my number one relationship with my wife is for the sake of money, because I've also other business shit to do. And I'm like, that is such bullshit. Like, let me go back to Dutch Bros and make some coffee.
Be back home. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope you don't do that, because we like your businesses. So. But obviously, thank you so much for taking your time today. The stories are inspiring,
forever, man. I feel like, man. But thanks so much. It's great to meet you, Joel. And,
good to meet you.
Look forward to watching your businesses keep out here in Spokane and learn more about them.
As always.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks, Joel.
Yeah.